following is a conversation with Cash Garman, a former coworker and current friend. In my time knowing Cash, I've come to know him as one of the greatest programmers I personally have ever met. As a hacker, he's his happiest when finding and pushing the limits of technology in any way he can. And his experimentation with AI and VR has been a source of inspiration for me. When I spend a few hours one-on-one with him, showing me his latest discoveries, I walk away as a better developer. Please enjoy this episode of Death, Taxes, Acid with Cash Garman. Good evening. Welcome, Cash. Why don't you start with your professional background, please?
My background. I started programming when I was 13. Uh, I wanted to make computers do my bidding, I guess. And
Don't we all?
I started professionally in the games industry, professionally at after my first studio, which I started at the university. I started professionally at Linden Lab, the creators of Second Life.
Mhm.
Um, I've been in the game industry for about 25 years, in various studios, which is the list is long and it's not worth getting into. But in recent days and years, I've been heavily involved in virtual reality and artificial intelligence. Not from the development of artificial intelligence, but more so the actual use, day-to-day use of artificial intelligence and what it's useful for.
Right.
So that's what's brought me here, and I know Shea very well. So it's absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you.
Cool. Yeah, we can come back to the AI stuff a little bit later, but first I want to get into your other professional background, which has hacked the planet, and I want to believe in it. Can you tell me about what you call the lab and maybe show us around a bit and say what you want
Yeah,
about it? Yeah.
I do have an image here, a photograph I took, I don't know, a month or so ago. So it's pretty representative of a midlife crisis. But I will share my screen so you can see that. Feel free to ask questions, any of the details. Hopefully, there's no passwords on post-it notes that I'll have to take down. But so this is my where I exist. This is the lab, capital T, capital L,
Yeah.
and it's also surrounded by electronics and synthesizers and everything that makes up a good midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And far too many pixels that should be pointed at one human.
This is an extremely dense photo.
Yeah, and this doesn't show what's behind me, which you
Yeah.
can probably see there.
So just
There's a wall of electronics there to make anything you need at
yeah.
arm's reach.
So just I guess quickly left to right, what's going on in the lab here?
Here are a bunch of synthesizers, which I have whether trying to decide whether to sell them or not and trade up for something else.
Yeah.
We got a Quest 3 down here because of
Yeah.
all my VR use. We got an Index, Valve Index up here.
Oh, nice.
We got a
Those
pile of books here that I have been waiting to read for ages, but we all know how that goes. You know, you collect them and you never get around to it.
what's in those shelves, the blue and red parts?
Parts of just literally everything,
Sick.
like any kind of weird project, like, and all of these stand things here. That's like this seen here. These are like monitor mounts, so I can
Mm-hmm.
like bring over a synth if I want to work on it or whatever I
Mm-hmm.
want to mount to it effectively. I'm a big fan of having everything at arm's reach. Like all my tools, for instance, are on magnet level. These are a bunch of my tools just stuck to magnets over here, and just so many pixels, so many pixels.
Yeah.
On deep in here, you can't see it because of the light. I live in Vancouver, Canada, and there's always a risk of a really nasty earthquake here. So underneath here, there's some ammo cans with military rations and a medical kit and some water. So
Nice.
this desk I built myself with my partner's late father, rest his soul. We built it together, and it is built like a brick house. And if this
It's okay. Swearing's
rubbish
allowed here.
building, okay, cool. That it's built like a brick shit house, and if the roof came down on this really old crappy building, then I could just tuck and roll and live there for only a couple of weeks.
And keep
So
coding. Keep
yeah,
coding
pretty
even
much,
in the
yeah. I
event
just
of an
grab my
earthquake.
laptop as I roll, and I'm good to go.
Cool. So,
That's the lab, yeah.
yeah, that is quite something to be working in. Now, you mentioned you've been going hard in the AI. So, what have you been working on lately? What are you thinking about with AI? What are your goals with it?
My long-term goals really focus around education. I think that I mean, we'll get into this later, but I think AI has a bit of a bad rep, understandably so,
Yeah.
because a lot of the dangers involved in it are replacing people's jobs. Now, I can get into my own feelings about that, but first I want to reiterate, like, I totally understand those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
They're completely valid and not remotely unjustified. I do like to shed light when I can on the upsides and how those downsides can be mitigated, and AI can be part of that solution. Um, Stuff I've been working on recently is I've been doing a lot of, um, I call it full speech to speech kind of NPCs. So you speak to something and it reacts immediately after having thought about something, and it speaks back to you in a very natural way. So if anybody's had access to um, OpenAI's like conversation AI, very similar to that, but everything I do is around open source models.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer not to, not that I don't respect them and think that they're powerful. I think I just don't want to really invest or engage too much in closed source models. I don't believe myself, don't believe that the future lies there. And as of the last week, or in fact, the last days, this is starting to show itself quite powerfully, like NVIDIA. And this is dated, this is so the date being, what we are, January 27th, 2025. NVIDIA just lost $500 billion in their value because an open source model that was built in China was able to be built, which rivals the best models that OpenAI has, was built with $500 million worth of compute power, whereas the models that it's in some cases um, improved upon in benchmarks they were built for over $100 million. So the compute power clearly wasn't as needed as necessary as possible. So now it's affected the global tech market quite
Right.
broadly.
So Deepseek has kind of blown the lid off in a way. Some of the industry, people are losing their minds about this now. My question is, how did they train the model so much more cheaply with so much less compute and hardware? Like, and part of the answer to this might be I saw a post from Jan LeCun on LinkedIn, and he wrote that DeepSeek is just is standing on the shoulders of like the U.S. Big AI models that have been open sourced or where the research is made public, and so um, how much of that is true, and how could they do it so much more cheaply?
I'll have to disclaimer this that I'm not. Whilst I use AI professionally and I know how to use it very deeply over the past 3, 4 years,
Yeah.
I am not a machine learning scientist
Right.
and an AI scientist, but I do have a sort of surface level. So everything here, take with a pinch of salt. But my understanding is all AIs are basically trained with reinforcement learning. So they're given they're they're basically in layman's terms said like give me an answer to this and they'll provide an answer and they say that's a terrible answer. Well, that's a great answer. The way you can do that, and generally how OpenAI, as an example, has been doing that, is with human reinforcement learning. And so at some point, there's a human in the loop, which has some costs, but I'm not sure that's particularly where the cost lies. But they have traditionally, to my understanding, always used a critique model to provide that. Is that a good answer? Is that a bad answer? So they've always had a second AI involved, now a model involved to critique the results of a new model to determine whether it's going in the right direction. And that's a fairly common way of doing it. What Deepseek has done, which I don't think is innovative necessarily, but no, it's not innovative because this is how um, AlphaGo by Google, which was the first AI to beat Go against a grand champion Go player, human. Um, it doesn't require it doesn't require a critiquing model. It doesn't need another model to say whether it's right or wrong. Instead, what they're doing, and I'm still figuring this out because this is again, I'm a user more than I am an AI scientist. But my understanding of it is it's using its own model to produce a bunch of answers or guesses, answers, whatever you want to really outputs, and then takes the average. Again, pinch of salt, but this is from the white papers I read, seems to be how they're operating. Which means there is no second model, there is no secondary inference. There is, but it's the same model. And there's no humans involved, which is obviously going to be a bottleneck. And I'm sure they have some other tricks up their sleeves, but they provably demonstrated that they can meet the same or superior quality outputs of frontier models coming out of the United States, Deepseek being a Chinese company, and they've done it for a fraction of the cost. And I think that's upset the market quite a lot. I personally lost several $1,000s worth of Nvidia stock, but I think that's a good thing. I think the world needs open source models like this because it's democratizing for a start. And okay, so a lot of the worry too is it's a Chinese company, privacy concerns like leaps people's mind immediately.
Right.
I would like to go on the record of alleviating some of that. These are open source models. I
Right.
have run I have run DeepSeek R1 on my personal computer, disconnected from the internet,
Right.
and it still produces really, really good results.
If it's open
So
source, anyone can just look and see what it's doing. If it's sending
yeah,
data to some server in China, like someone would
yeah,
see that. Like
it's an unfortunate.
it's really not hard to see that it. I'm
Yeah,
not
and
even
there's no
sure.
reason these models are connected to the internet. There's no reason for them to have to be like they run on your GPU. Done.
Right.
You can be running on a Raspberry. There's someone's already running it on a Raspberry Pi.
Right.
Not connected to the internet, so there's no need. Those worries are unfounded. I
Yeah.
guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So my question becomes, how do we get from like a more efficient training method to loss in NVIDIA share value.
I thought the same thing when I woke up this
So,
morning, quite
yeah,
a lot poorer than I was. Um, but then
pour on
I
paper,
really, yeah,
unrealized gains.
I'm gonna have to find another way to pay my rent next month. But yeah, but no, I think it's on the surface doesn't make much sense because they're still using NVIDIA cards to train these things. But if they can do it so much more cheaply, oh well, they need so much less compute to train these models, and I mean, remains to be seen whether the inference, the actual usage of the AI, is cheaper. The training is generally one of the most expensive components of it because it's like a one shot. You have to you do it at the start, and it costs a fortune, $100 million plus in OpenAI's case. But if they're doing this for like $5 million, then OpenAI just bought like I don't I'm not going to quote figures, but tens of thousands of cards, maybe hundreds of and X. Elon Musk. I'm not going to go into that topic too much, but Elon Musk has invested. The U.S. has just plopped down $500 billion for AI.
Stargate.
Stargate, exactly. And if it's now suddenly like, well, you don't need $100 million, you only need five, then the value proposition of NVIDIA was earmarked for $100 billion of that $500 billion for Stargate. It's a bit weaker.
Right.
It's like you find out that your Tesla's actually only worth like a grand. You just spent 50 grand on it or 100 grand on it.
So I guess China just, what did they do? Discover a newer method of training that's just like a fraction of the cost. I guess
Well, I think
they just
it's
did.
unfair to call it China because, as far as I'm aware, again, these are very developing stories. Like I'm still not completely clued on it, but as far as I'm aware, there's Princeton University working with China that created these models. So I think it'd be fairer to say it's the open source community
Right.
that's turning things on its head,
Right. Okay.
which is beautiful to see because academia is always going to be an open platform. Like, yeah, you get a patent here and there, but this doesn't seem to be the case right now, which is on a broader scheme of things fantastic for humanity because we really don't want this stuff to be closed doors right now at
No.
all.
It's just funny to me that um, like China just did what China does best, found a way to like make something at a fraction of the cost that it gets made in the West, whether it's like,
Yeah.
stoves or forks and knives. It's AI models apparently too. So
I mean, we've both grown up in North America, most primarily, and in the West at least.
yeah,
And it's starting to make me question, like, I don't want to get political or anything, but it's starting to make me question. I think it feels like China's being a bit more working globally with universities and stuff than Silicon Valley is. Silicon Valley, I think, is keeping things kind of closed, and it's stifling. And whether it's for economic reasons or business reasons or not, it feels like we can do better. And I think China is one of the players that's doing it in a more open way, which I think is good to see.
right. Well, yeah, I would say that in Silicon Valley, they're US based, all the money is privately funded, and all they want is like ROI, right?
Yeah.
Whereas China, they might have some slightly different kind of goals with that, whether that's goodwill for the world. I think that's probably a big one because that's a way that they could kind of compete with the US right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could be just low hanging fruit that like
Yeah,
they know they can compete on the technological level, and they can. I mean, I'm not naive enough to think there's no political aspect to this.
there's always this. There always
Like
is.
knowing that you can undermine a huge industry in a
Yeah,
country that's traditionally been, you know, not an enemy, but
a
it's
competitor.
there's been tension. Yeah, and knowing you can undermine that just by throwing something on GitHub.
Yeah.
It's just kind of wild.
So performance wise, what is good about Deepseek? Why is, apart from the how cheap it was to produce, why is it causing such kind of shockwaves from a developmental point of view? What is good about it? Does it have any advantages? Does it do anything better than the rest? Like
I would say,
how much have you worked with it at all?
I mean, this is again, this news is like very fresh because it's
Right.
DeepSeek R1, DeepSeek V3, which is the model that R1 was built on, has only really been around it for a short period of time, and R1, as time of recording, has only really been around for maybe a week and a half.
Right.
And I mean, I can show you. I think a demonstration might be an easy way
Yeah.
to grasp what this is, because it's. Let me share my screen once again.
Yeah. Do you have it ready?
I do, yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the magic button that they introduced, Deep Think.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually prepared a prompt. Just this is a demonstration.
Perfect.
So before I run this prompt, which is there, write a script for a podcast about the latest developments in AI and how they will affect jobs of programmers.
Cool.
So narrowing it down a little here.
Yeah, yeah.
The host name is Shea. The guest name is Cash. Cash is a senior programmer specializing in AI. So it's a loose prompt, but the difference between, and this is important to understand, the difference between this and ChatGPT, which most people are familiar with,
Yeah.
is this is a reasoning AI. So you'll see that, and this is one of the coolest things about it. It's so easy to anthropomorphize its response because it OpenAI's O1 does this stuff, but they hid it all behind the curtain because they didn't want anybody to get any ideas and steal trade secrets. But they have not done this with DeepSeek, so you get to see this really interesting. Unless the server is overloaded, we'll see. So this here is its inner thinking. This is what it's thinking about, but it
Oh,
reads.
so that's not the output yet.
It reads incredibly human-like, like the prose and the way it talks, and it second guesses itself. And there's a lot of technical reasons for this, like how it runs internally.
Second
But the
guessing
way that
itself.
it gets like, oh, hang on, but what if it does that kind of and wonders. It wonders a lot. So I mean, I can read this if you like. So anyways,
Go
not.
ahead.
So I've asked it to write a script for a podcast about the latest developments in AI and how they affect the jobs of programmers. The host's name is Shea, and the guest's name is Cash. Cash is a senior programmer specializing in AI. So it starts its thought process. So what I'm about to read is the thought process
Okay.
of R1, and this is a similar process, no doubt, that things like OpenAI's O1 is using, but they don't show the thought process. So this is why this is also interesting.
Okay.
So I'm speaking as the AI now.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to write a podcast script where the host Shea interviews Cash, a senior AI programmer, about the latest AI developments and their impact on programmers' jobs. Let me start by outlining the structure. So you'll notice as I read this, it's like this self-critique.
So hold on a
hopefully.
sec. It's reasoning. Can we pause for 1 sec? It's reasoning in natural language. Or are they?
If you want to get technical, it's reasoning, it's in embeddings and running through LLMs and stuff, but it's outputting. It's reasoning in a way that actually is uncannily human.
Okay, cool. So continue.
First, the intro. Shea welcomes listeners and introduces the topic and the guests. Then they start the conversation. Cash should provide insights about recent AI advancements. Hopefully I've done some of that. I need to think. So this is interesting. I need to think. You'll see this kind of.
That's nuts. That is a
You'll
weird.
see this. You'll see this kind of stuff come up a lot, and I'll show you a new, more interesting example, which I'll throw it to you after.
The use of the pronoun I, right, in its reasoning.
It's very human-like.
Did GPT does that? Does it do that?
No. Well, it's hidden. The thing is, that with
Okay.
OpenAI, it's hidden. It may be doing a similar thought process, but they've
Okay.
hidden it, and they just have little like
Okay.
ticker loading bar stuff. They don't go. They don't expose any of it.
Are you able to do
So
the same prompt in ChatGPT just to compare?
yeah, why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to finish reading that
I'll
first
do
and
it
then
on. Yeah, let's go back to that first.
do you want to do it in Claude or
It'll
ChatGPT?
be a, okay. I'll see if I can speed run this thing.
Okay.
First, welcome to listener. I need to think of the latest developments in AI as of 2023. So this is its training cutoff
Right.
point. Up till 2 days ago, this search button, which will search for the latest details, which I would have activated, but I think they're having some
Web
issues
traffic
with the
problems, yeah.
servers are being overloaded, I
Yeah.
think, currently. But this is now enabled, which means this 22-23 cutoff is no longer relevant because it now could do the same latest developments as a search. I'll try again after this and see if it actually does work because the servers are kind of being pummeled. But possible points to cover. Oh, hang on, I missed a bit. Maybe mention things like GPT-4, code creation tools, Copilot, Code Whisperer, AI and debugging, autonomous programming like Devon and Cognition. I've actually never heard of Cognition. That's new. I'll look that one up. Next, discuss how this affects programmers' jobs. It also tends to be quite empathetic when it comes to things about human-human interactions. Hash should address both the positive effects, efficiently handling mundane tasks, which I have and will get into more
Yeah.
into if we have time, and the concerns. And this is obviously one of the most important parts: job displacement, need for adaptation. It's important to highlight that AI is a tool, and I've been saying this to so many people. But I'm going to shut up and just read its response. Not a replacement, and that programmers still need to upskill. Will need to upskill.
Well, surely the AI wants everyone to think that it's not going to replace anyone,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. It is a good point.
I'm joking. I'm
There's
joking.
two
I'm
schools of thought
joking.
there.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to use this prompt is I thought that it would generate questions and thoughts and discussion. I thought it would be a good launching point for that because I think it does.
Yeah.
There's a lot of even this one sentence is this paragraph is it's poignant because it's not wrong at all to think that AI is going to replace jobs. That is just a fact.
It's going to. It is already.
The same way the printing press replaced jobs. The same
Yeah.
way that the automobile replaced jobs. It's kind of the nature of technological advancements. It may be slightly different now because AI stands the chance of self-improving.
Right.
So the singularity or
Yeah.
whatever
So
you
I'll jump
prefer to
in.
call it
I'll jump in with some
um,
thoughts there real
could
quick.
be a thing.
So
But as it stands right now, AI is an incredible tool. And what I do agree with, even though AI is the one telling me, I believe this of my own accord, is handling mundane tasks.
yes.
There are so many jobs, and I
Yes.
work with many people and have worked with many people who hate their jobs
Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
so much of their jobs is repetitive, mundane
Repetitive.
tasks.
Yeah.
And they may have really good ideas they prefer to pursue, basically leveling up their career and their job, but they're unable to because they're bogged down in mundane stuff.
Right.
And we've reached a point now where, for better or worse, we can replace those jobs with simple programs written by AI. And I've done this already multiple times for colleagues of mine. That just eliminates those mundane tasks. I don't see the negative there because
Yeah.
the same people have bigger ideas that will benefit themselves and the organization they work for, but they can't execute on them because they're bogged down in mundane tasks. So one definite positive of AI is being able to eliminate those mundane tasks. I mean, you're always going to have a human eye on it because AI can make mistakes.
Right.
That's why it says right down here, AI generated for reference only.
Right. So my thinking on the whole jobs thing.
What
So
else I got to say here? Possible points to cover. It's doing my job for me. I'm being replaced right now. Possible points to cover. AI's role
it's replacing
in.
you as a
Oh,
guest right
I'm just
now.
gonna do a sound check quick. In here.
One, two,
So I
three.
must have spoken must have spoken over you for quite a while now.
A couple, yeah, a
Do you
little bit.
want to? Sorry, man.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. So I was making a joke that the AI is already replacing you as a guest in the podcast. But so I just wanted to jump in with that whole issue, like the whole job replacement thing. So I listened to a bit of Zuck on Rogan, and they talked about that, and Zuck goes to like, well, most of the economy used to be farming, and then industrialization happened, and now it unlocked productivity. And it's like that's true, but that is like, I don't think that that's at all something that's applicable here, because it's not like people went from farming to like those massive combine machines in 5 years. Right? Like that took like that was a very slow process,
Yep.
right? And AI is intelligent. It's more than a tool. It's agentic, right?
Yep. I think
So
this.
so like we're going into some new territory here. I do think over the long run it can unlock kind of like a new era of like productivity and you know economic output, but it's the short term that I think is what's scary, right? So yeah, if I could somehow
Yeah.
get Zuck to listen to that, I would ask him what he thought about that, so
It's an incredibly interesting field of questions because I think the comparison to agriculture and previously like industrial revolution kind of um, benefits, side effects, and that kind of stuff. I think they're topically related, but I don't think the scale is as relevant because if you take farming, agriculture as an example, the output was always meant to be the same. Producing food or other crops for other reasons, you're still producing something you grow. And it would take a lot of manpower to do that before, and now you have GPS tracked and guided combine harvesters
right.
that could be controlled from a bunker somewhere. I mean, it's not the same. It takes far less people, but the output is the same. You're still trying to produce. You have genetic engineering, and the whole industry is still trying to aim at the same thing. I don't think you can lump into the same category realistically, because first of all, it targets so many different industries.
Yeah.
Every industry, arguably every industry,
Yeah.
bar a few, very few. And how agriculture evolved into what it is now was a slower process. It took time, and it took training, it took development of new machinery, it took testing of that machinery, it took adoption of that machinery. It took time for that process to happen. During that time, people were learning how to use that machinery, to being trained. The job market shifted along with the development. Like it was a process, like a linear process. Maybe slightly exponential in the case, but it was still a process. AI is a different beast, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily means like doom and gloom. I don't. It's hard to quantify that because it's a it's it's a subjective thing. Like I see it through one lens. I see it primarily through the lens of a programmer. Partially through the lens of business and writing grant applications or creating 3D art or 2D art, which is obviously a hot topic. So I see it through those lenses, but it really is not anywhere near as limited as like agricultural revolution as a technology than that was. It's everywhere, and it can touch everything, every industry. So the fears are founded, but I do think you can treat it as a tool still because we're talking about different use cases. Every use case is still going to need a model that's trained for that use case, whether it's you can't ask it currently until we get super intelligence. Like you can't ask. Yes, there are multimodal models, but generally, like you don't ask one model to create you a symphony and the same model to write you a business plan. There are models that can do the same. They can do both those things, but they're not specialized enough to really do their top tier work on that. It's going to be, a pass. So it's tricky. Yeah. So I don't want to ramble too far on objections. So
Yeah,
I'll
continue
let
with
you flow.
the demo thing here.
Okay. We probably covered a lot of these points already during our
Yeah,
conversation.
it's all good.
Um, Need to make the failing on this point. Well done, Cash. Need to make the conversation flow naturally. So you ask questions. Cash responds with expertise. We'll say that happened. Maybe include some examples or analogies to make it relatable. We've done that. For instance, comparing AI tools previous. This is what AI.
For instance,
It's this is still its internal thought process. This is
yeah,
not even before it produces
right.
an
We haven't
output.
even got to the output yet, eh?
Yeah. 'Cause this is
So I
dark
like how
gray.
it
It'll
says,
down here is the output. Is
right. So
that'll be interesting.
I like how it says, for instance, comparing AI tools to previous technological shifts like compilers or the internet.
Yeah.
I
And
think
this is
it's a
kind of what we've
little
been
bit
talking about.
more.
This is
It's a
why I
little
wanted
bit
to.
more than a compiler. you know.
I don't. I think that's a fair comparison because I think people underestimate what this. If you're not in the tech industry, a compiler is a huge, huge seismic shift in the ability for the creation of software and the internet and
Is that
everything.
so? A compiler is how you went from like assembly to natural language code. Is that what?
A compiler
Is
effectively
that what it did?
is a compiler basically will take. Why can't I not zoom in here? There we go.
Machine code,
So a compiler doesn't do this. This is what the computer runs,
right?
right? So this is the CPU going, hey oh, I know that.
Yeah.
And then you got machine. Actually, no, it's assembly, really, before we get to machine code. Assembly being, I'm not going to write a bunch of assembly right now, but it'll be things like jump, and then some hex, this is the stuff that you can decompile like an executable file, the binary executable file into. So this is can be I can't fucking spell. I'm gonna give up on the spelling thing. Um, so you have layers basically, and this analogy, while not really being emphasized here, I think is an important one, a really important one. It actually it's probably going to mention it down here. Yep, Fortran, of course it did.
Now it's predicting the how this podcast is going.
Yeah, and this is why I thought it'd be an interesting
Next
way to drive the
podcast.
conversation.
Next podcast
It's like I
prediction.
don't think when I code now, I'll show you an example of this in a moment. I over the past only a few weeks, I don't. So I use an IDE, so an integrated development environment. You're familiar, I'm familiar, but for anybody who's not familiar, that's basically where you do your coding. So that's where you input your code and you can debug it and run it, and do basically that's where most programmers do their work. They didn't exist when there was just binary, which originally was on punch cards. Oh, I even have some punch cards examples. But
Hold on. What was that?
actually, it's actually music, but it's punch
Oh.
cards still. Um, I got a music box that plays punch cards. Anyway, so that it was originally punch cards, which was completely binary. Well, it was technically hex, but then and then there was assembly, which is something you could theoretically read. And then you got lower level languages, which are far more readable, things like C.
Yeah.
And then you got higher level languages like Java and C
Python.
Sharp, Python. I think what we're looking at now is the next step, which seemed pretty obvious
I
to me.
see
In
what
fact,
you're saying.
I did a lot of work on this myself, but there's a lot of open source stuff that's leaps and bounds ahead of my work. So I just kind of
I see what you're
just
saying.
building.
So
The thing is I don't well, that's the lab again. I don't really this is where the code goes. So if I make main.c, this would be where your void main I haven't heard C ages. Oh, don't need to because AI will do it for me. This is normally how what you were looking at. I don't use that anymore. Recently, I literally this is how I communicate with the AI
yeah.
and I make that I've forgotten how to do this in do, 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 do. They've only added this feature recently, but basically I don't have the code in on display. Let's just fake it by just doing this. I'm just talking to the AI
Right.
because I don't I can read the code. I mean, again, I've been doing this for 25 years, so like, sure, it stings a little to know that all that not wasn't a waste, but it what it does mean is all that experience is only when I need it. It's like you're a Formula One driver, but you do also know how to repair the engine if things go wrong.
So what you're saying is
Unless
what you're saying is AI is kind of another top layer of abstraction that's easier to use between that goes between the human and the machine code.
yeah.
Okay,
So
so starting so
let's
like
let's
like
let's make
starting
something.
with machine code going up, right? It goes machine code and then we had assembly and that was like a little bit more legible to humans and then above that we got like I don't know what it's called, natural language code, such
Hmm.
lower level languages, and that's like very human readable, C++, C, whatever. And then you're
Yeah.
saying now you don't even have to read or write code to code. You just like ask for
And
it
this is where the liberating thing I think
in
works.
like a chat format, right?
Yeah,
So
and I think even beyond that, because I don't know, I'm sure most programmers don't agree with my sentiment, but I don't like programming. I don't like slamming on a keyboard and staring at screens all day. I mean, you've seen the pictures of the lab, like my eyes hurt.
yeah,
I like to do my coding at a cafe or a pub on the pen and paper. That's because to me it's just architecture. It's just building a thing in your mind. And an example of that, and this is usually, if it works, is usually pretty fun. Okay, here's just a random window I have open. It's a Docker desktop. So if I screenshot this, I'm sure I could find a better example, but I'm going to screenshot this, and this is, again, we're demoing live here, so this is probably going to be awful. I can just paste this screenshot in,
Holy
choose the
shit.
model I want, and say create a web app based on this screenshot. Like, I'm
Holy
not even
shit.
gonna, purposely not giving it any
Not even
remote
saying
info.
what you
I'm
want it
just
to
giving it a
do.
screenshot. And this is not using R1 or
Yeah, but
O1.
it
This
knows
is using
Docker.
Sonnet. This is using Cloud Sonnet 3.5, which is already effectively a generation behind. And this thing is running in agentic mode, I believe it should be. So yeah, it's creating the entire code base. Like, I don't need to see the code. If something goes horribly wrong, I can either talk to the AI to fix it, or I can dig deeper. But it's happening less and less that I need to actually look at the code. So it is effectively a seismic shift.
Right.
And then,
But
so it's running in
the
JIT.
thing is, you can't do this unless you can read code. Like, you're not going to
Yeah,
know if you
that's
don't
kind
know
of my
what it's
point.
doing. If you don't know what it's doing, even if you know what to ask for, if you don't know what it's doing and what its output means, as soon as there's a bug or it gets stuck on something or it does something you don't want it to do, you're not going to know how to fix it, right? So,
For now, yes.
for now, you say?
Yeah. Because I've lost the tab structure. I normally don't run this as that tab. This is so just to set the scene here. This is an IDE called Cursor,
Yeah.
and they recently added a new feature called Composer, which is what's able to make changes to files. This is why
Right.
at least this whole file has been set up. I need to put this back
I was
into
using
the side
Cursor
there.
today, actually.
Yeah, how are you finding it?
So, what I love about it is that I don't need to understand everything that I'm asking it to do. I just need to understand from a high level what I want it to do, and it does it. And that is crazy to me, right? So, like,
So that's
I'm in Unity today. Unity is not my forte, and I'm using a plugin that I didn't write. So
mhm.
C sharp, I can pretty easily read C sharp, but I'm using another person's plugin, and that's always difficult, right? It takes a lot of time to understand. If someone didn't document their code, they didn't comment it. Like, you gotta like debug it to know what is actually happening, what it's doing, right? So it takes time. Whereas Cursor just knows what everything is doing right away, right? So I can ask it to modify this plugin, and it's going to do it 100 times faster than I'll figure out how to do it. Because I got to like I would have to step through someone's code, figure out, the structure and what objects are, how they relate to each other. Meanwhile, I don't fully understand Unity's, like, you know, how Unity works. So it just does that like super quick, you know?
I think this is part of the fear too, is people realize that it's doing so much of the work that they feel like they don't know what's going on anymore. And I would argue that that's a workflow problem.
Right.
Like how I've learned recently how to use AI effectively is I'll have to do a few steps of development. First of all, I've definitely got better with source control. Like almost per prompt, I'm backing things up because AI can quite happily just stomp all over my
Yeah,
previous work.
I noticed that too. It changes multiple
Yeah.
files at the same
So
time.
it's
So yeah,
reverting things is not like a last resort. It's like a common uncontrolled Z undo. It's like I do it all the time because
yeah.
But I also, like, I've written some scripts, or AI has written some scripts at my direction to take entire code bases and create doc strings. So Doxygen style commenting on methods and classes and fields and whatnot,
Hmm.
and then generate HTML for that, which you can then it becomes this like cyclic thing because you can then locally host that. Well, again, I didn't write any of the scripts. I just knew what I wanted from experience. So like I want all this code to be properly commented, and it'll infer what everything's supposed to be doing. And then I want you to create a script that will host a local HTML server and host all the docs and comments using some Python library, and then you can point the AI at that local host, and it will scrape it and then condense it into its knowledge of the entire code base. So whether it wrote it or not, whether it was part of the conversation you just had in the context window that you just had, it will now have a greater understanding of the entire code
Yeah.
base. This could be a massive code base because it's condensed it through documentation. So like there's it's how you use AI. This is the exciting part, I think, for me, is you're no longer just like just steaming away at the keyboard writing code and then deal with repercussions and bugs and all that crap later. It's a totally different paradigm. It's writing the code for you, but then you're asking it to document it, then you're asking it to reflect based on the documentation and your design document, if you have one, or if AI has made one for you. You're asking all these things to work for you. So you're delegating. You've programmer's job at this point is no longer a programmer. We are the same way the term calculator used to be a human being
Right.
back in the day, like in the space race,
Right.
there were human beings, pen and paper, human
Yeah,
beings,
yeah, yeah,
slide
yeah.
rules. Like that was,
No
and now we don't
computers. They
think
were
of that.
those. They were computers. That's what the job title was. I remember that during the.
Was it computers? I thought it was
Yeah, they were no,
calculators.
no
Computers?
computers. Like they before machines, a computer was the job of a person, and I think they employed a ton of them for Manhattan Project, right?
Yeah. Oh, it was an Oppenheimer. Oh, wait, what was that
Yeah, yeah.
film? I digress, but there was another great film about
So
computers, like
so
the human computers.
so it sounds to me what you're saying is it's similar to like instead of as a programmer, instead of going out and pouring the concrete with your hands or like laying the wire, you're now the guy in that little trailer who's the foreman of the job site, just like overseeing the whole operation, right?
I mean,
Um,
analogy I use a lot is that you wouldn't ask an architect to do your plumbing.
no, right, right. So that's the programmer's version of this, is what you're saying.
That's the way I see it, at least. Like
That is
you,
like that
as
is
like an architect understands like the concepts of plumbing. They have to. They have to go. That's why their education is so long. They have to
right.
understand this stuff, but they don't get their hands dirty doing that.
Yeah,
They certainly understand the
yeah,
interactions
yeah.
between different systems and
Right, right,
and good design principles and all
right.
those things, but they don't do that. And AI, I think, fills that gap, and I still believe it's going to elevate people to, well, I believe personally is, unless you're a one of those masochists who just loves semicolons and just loves hammering on the keyboard. I prefer the architectural side of things, the design
Yeah,
side of things, and it allows me to
that's
learn more.
fascinating way of looking at it. Actually, that's a great way to look at it. That's
I do know a lot of people who really lament the fact that they will not be wearing out their semicolon button on the keyboard. But then I think that's a special breed, to be fair.
I don't know. Like as someone who's still relatively new to coding, like I in a way I see that. Like I like it's fun to write code, although to actually I don't know. Like I haven't really written much code without the assistance of AI in right. So like
It's fun to write code, but it's
Like you
fun. It's like
start,
it's in the same way. It's the same way it's
but
fun
like
to
the
do a
moving,
hobby.
yeah, you move so much more smoothly and quickly. It's a much more enjoyable process to just watch, to just watch the composer just fill out everything that you asked it to do. That's pretty sweet. And then just moving on to the next task 5 times, 10 times faster
Yeah,
than you would have taken
like
if you were
it's
like
cool
typing all
the
this
fact that I
stuff
can
out.
do this. Computer, make the light green.
Oh, behind you. Yeah.
It's cool I can do that. But would I want to spend an afternoon, a week, a month programming that? No. Just buy it off Amazon and then hack it to do the other shit.
Yeah.
By the way, this is the output it put with a just a screenshot. It's the original.
It's pretty cool.
So the difference between like this is there are people who enjoy CSS
Oh.
somehow. How I have no idea. But the fact that you can just screenshot something and then boom, you've got it's you're like 90% of the way there. And then you can make changes far, far more easily. Like you've that is a job that's unfortunately going to be in. I think people who kind of wrangle with HTML and CSS are that job. Unfortunately, I think is it's going to go the way of the people who wrote books manually before the printing press.
Right. I mean,
But I think most people don't enjoy that job anyway, so
right.
they can use this tool and elevate their creativity.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the Deepseek thing. Continue with that. So I was thinking, as a comparison, it would be cool to put the same prompt in ChatGPT or Claude
Sure.
and do a comparison.
Okay, let's start with ChatGPT. Just now got a new tool section. So we'll give it reason 01. So this will be the most direct comparison. Probably not the best prompt. What's really cool about the newer models is their canvas mechanics. So you'd have like half the screen is the prompt, the other half is like a live website tool or something. And those are really, really fun to work on. And this is where things like programmers like, oh, I'll be his target. But like, I really, really, I'm excited to see. And this is what I'm hoping part of the audience of this podcast is like realizing that these tools are so incredibly useful for non-programmers, like people who work with any repetitive task. You might be in HR, you might be in biz dev, could be anything. Tools like this, especially the ones that can search the internet, and I'll show you an example in a moment. So we're hopefully gonna get something pretty similar here, or at least something that's subjectively similar. It's going to be hard to say which is better or not.
Can you see the reasoning of GPT?
No,
Oh,
it just gives you thought about, and they did this for business purposes.
okay.
Oh, actually, you can click on that now and get a small summary. They've been trying out. They've been it seems intentionally trying to hide a lot of their internal thought process because they didn't want
It's like
other AIs to just kind of scrape it and learn from it.
right. So it's like trade
So this,
secrets or
I don't
whatever.
think this is actually representative. I don't likely this is not representative of the actual internal process. I mean, let's give
Okay.
Claude a shot at it. Claude's interesting because you can choose different styles, so you can have. I
Yeah.
just give it normal, but it really depends what you're asking. It's also got tool use. This is a great example of their one of the features that's being adopted, and that's the artifact. They call it artifacts here. OpenAI has a different word for it. I think it's called Canvas. And connection issue. Cool. I'll give that one more shot. Um, but yeah, this is really fun for. I mean, I'm a cigarette smoker, and when I go out for a smoke, I have my little stump in my front yard. I call it my thinking stump, and I have the Claude app on my phone, and I'll like come up with some random game idea that's like web based or something, and I'll in the space of one cigarette, I'll see how far I can develop a game just using Claude and its voice recognition too. So I'm like smoking and talking on my phone, and I've got remarkably far with games before. So this one didn't fail. So you're seeing a lot of similar patterns here. It's writing it like a script, so it
Yeah.
has like stage movements and whatnot. What's more interesting, and this might be a fun exercise, is what's your favorite animal?
Mine?
Yeah.
Beaver.
Okay. Um, what's your favorite activity?
Activity?
Yeah.
My favorite activity. Coding? No, but sure.
Okay. Okay. Coding. Pick a country.
Zimbabwe.
Can't fucking spell that name, sorry.
Zimbabwe.
My spelling's terrible. I'm sure if I get it wrong, it'll be corrected quickly. So, I did. Yeah. Okay. Choose a game genre. Something that's textish based.
Like a real time strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Create a web-based game based on the following.
Change coding to skiing.
Genre. Character. Main character. Um,
Actually, change
Goal.
coding to motorcycling.
Oh, yeah. So this probably will not produce a good result, but my point here is, sorry, activity, purpose, goal. The purpose of this is not to create a finished game. The purpose of this is like how quickly you can sketch out an idea
Right.
and generate more of your own ideas. And this is why I think AI generated art is doesn't really have much human value. This is the thing people are very worried and scared about. We'll go with just normal. I think it'll be fine. I'm just gonna use Claude. I mean, I can use anything, but I'll run it on a couple. Why not? So this is another IDE called Windsurf. People are worried that like AI is going to replace artists. My I said computer, and now my little Alexa bot just woke up.
Oh.
Um, my counterpoint to that would be that why do we pay more for original artwork than prints of artwork.
Right.
And would you, honestly, if you dig deep and think about it, would you pay as much money for an AI generated piece of art than something a human
Obviously
made?
not. No.
I don't think many people in the world could honestly say yes to that because we're human. That's why handmade things, this is really, give it a, so while we're talking, I'm just going to make this less burning on my retina. So,
Beaver
given your
Killer
inputs,
Empire.
given your preferences here, oh, it's probably this. Oh, it's just ignoring me. Whatever. It's created a beaver courier empire in Zimbabwe. Looks like it's an idle clicker game. So you got $100, buy a bike, take it a delivery, and there that's happening now. That's like that's just that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the points here being is that people saying, "Oh, AI is going to replace everything." Sure, but would you buy this game? No.
No.
But does it give you kind of an idea to like kind of roll with? It might.
Yeah.
Could it help you develop the idea? I think it could. At some point, is it going to basically not going to be able to help you anymore? But you've got so much momentum and creative momentum that you can finish it. I think it's a higher chance than
Yeah.
if you're just sitting there staring at a screen or staring at a notepad, trying to come up with ideas. Like the idea of being able to iterate so quickly on ideas, whether it's artistic, whether it's a game design, whether it's writing a proposal for a grant or an interview cover letter, like the idea that you can iterate very quickly on those things is pretty potent. It's not going to replace any of those things, but it certainly helps. I think I'm going to take another delivery. I take all the deliveries. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tool.
Cool. What did the windsurf do?
Oh yeah, I asked for the same thing, and so windsurf's a bit more potent. Doesn't just Windsurf could make full-on like non-web based applications, so it's a little more potent. It also, so even completely, okay, that's okay. So it's a real-time strategy game where you control a resourceful beaver on a motorcycle, adventure through Zimbabwe, gather resources, build structures, navigate through various terrains while completing missions. So you control the beaver. So it's gone for an actual real-time WAS movement control stuff. It is doing it web-based, but I didn't tell it to do otherwise, so I could if I wanted to, because this is a full IDE, so I can run anything. So I can accept all, and again, this being a .md file or markdown file, I can read it as such. So you're given like full documentation, which you can then go ahead and edit, and then have it
Yeah.
feedback loop off of that documentation. So you're kind of like live editing a game design doc, and also play the game. Okay, keep in mind. Let's get
Not
this
much.
out of.
Beaver's just a brown circle. It's a little bit lame.
Get to the current mission. Get to the river. Okay, so it's made like a snake game, but it's collecting resources. This is the thing that people are gonna get wrong about AI, or starting to get less wrong about AI. Is like, oh, it didn't save the world in one prompt. I'm like, of
Yeah,
course it
yeah,
didn't.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's one prompt.
Right.
And this is why it's almost pragmatic. This is why I don't have my code open anymore. Because it gets in the way if I want to split screen it. If I want to split screen it, I need more space. So now I'm no longer dealing with the code. I'm like, okay, right. So what do you want to change for this? Let's add a grass texture. It's a beaver. It's probably going to be a grass area. And if this is not liberating feeling, come on, and keep it in mind, I'm not using a little bleeding edge stuff. This is what was bleeding edge a couple months ago. Like if this is not, show this to a kid and tell them like, yeah, you can make your own game.
Right.
These are kids that are making amazing things out of Minecraft and stuff. Like give them this. Sorry, if you're a dinosaur and you're still coding in Fortran, then we'll carry on, I guess, as a hobby. All right.
Oof.
So we got
Yikes.
a flickery texture. The ground is flickering. Like the iterations and how you have to describe them is so simple. Disclaimer: this is not free. It is incredibly cheap, but this is running on my own account, and it's costing a few pennies per game.
Right. What's the
There you go.
most? Tell
The
me
ground
about.
looks less shitty now.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a beaver though.
No. So make it look more like
The
a beaver,
player,
like.
yeah, doesn't look at all like the beaver. So, well, it's just kind of just messing around, making a silly game.
Another nice thing about
This could
AI.
quite easily be. Sorry?
Another nice thing about AI is you don't have to like pepper your language with like please,
Yeah,
thank you,
you can misspell
politeness.
everything, it doesn't care.
Yeah, and just like you can just be a little douche about it. The player doesn't look like a beaver, you know. Like you, if you were a boss, you'd be an asshole talking like that. You know.
The thing is, like, whilst this is sort of a silly example, albeit probably going to be fun, this could be a tool that replaces a good portion of your day job,
Yeah.
therefore making your day job just better.
Right.
I think that's the bit that's lost in some people. It's like you see a lot of silly examples, but it's because they're being, I think, unfairly shown most of the time as silly examples. It's like, yeah, there. That's not bad.
And
It's
it's
not bad.
riding a tractor-like object.
Yeah, this is the thing that really kind of can pull your mind. Make this game multiplayer using WebSockets and add a public lobby with matchmaking. This is something you give to an intermediate to a senior developer and send off for a week. I'm going to hit enter and use the toilet. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey, cool.
Back. It's still going.
Yeah. So while this is doing its thing, maybe I can ask you some questions.
Yeah.
How much should you use AI at the moment?
Every day. I
What's to what?
I use Claude when I'm coding. I now use it anytime I have something I want to look up. Like it's replaced probably like half my Google searches because I can ask like much more specific questions, right? So I can add like a ton of parameters to the thing that I'm asking about, right? Like trying to think of an example. Like, oh, great example. I was researching my family history recently, and I found that I traced my ancestry back to an Irish family that emigrated from Northern Ireland outside of Belfast, and they arrived in Montreal in the 1860s. So I also found out that that family, which had six boys as that were the children, so a couple of the brothers were Boilermakers. So I asked Claude, and I said, what was a Boilermaker? And the context here is I'm researching my ancestors that lived in Montreal in the late 19th century. And so Claude replies saying, wait, can you give me a link and can I join?
Right now it's hosted locally, but yeah, I mean, if given a few more minutes, which
Okay.
probably isn't worth getting to right now. But yeah, this is yeah. Carry on,
So
sorry.
no, it's okay. And so then I asked like, hey, I found one of my ancestors was a Boilermaker. What is this job? They lived in Montreal at this time period, right? And so Claude says, oh yeah, so Boilermaker was a skilled trade back in the industrial period. And then it said Boilermakers would have been very important to, Grand Trunk Railway. And it mentioned specific companies that were specific to this area of Montreal, right? And so it might have even have listed one of my ancestors' former employers, like without even realizing, like, right? So then on top of
Yeah, I mean
that,
that's pretty narrow. So I
so
mean that's
right,
quite
exactly.
believable.
So that's the thing. Like Google would never tell me that sort of thing. And then I asked, and I continued the same conversation, and I said, "What was so they moved? I'm pretty sure they moved in the 1860s." So I asked, "What would have caused a family from Northern Ireland to leave their home and go start anew across the ocean in like Montreal, Canada?" And it said, well, Ireland was still feeling the economic fallout of the famine. The famine wasn't happening at that time, and it wasn't.
Was the year? What was the year again?
So they arrived in. My best guess is in the 1860s.
Okay, so
So
it's pre-depression.
earliest the earliest address I found was in 1866. By the way, I
And
found that
sorry, what was the location they came from again? I missed that bit. My bad.
Northern Ireland, outside of Belfast.
1860s.
Yeah. So I said, so Claude. So I said, what would have motivate? What was motivating people to move at that point? And then Claude replied, saying, "Well, the famine didn't reach Northern Ireland. Wasn't too badly. Didn't have too much of a famine, so
Oh
that
right.
wasn't happening. And then, but the economic fallout was happening all over the island of Ireland. So people would have left for just better, you know, job opportunities. And then it said, based on what you told me earlier about it being a Boilermaker, this also makes sense because that area had jobs that were like, like that area had a lot of industry that produced the skills needed for Boilermakers. So it was able to
I
connect,
mean
and
that
then
yeah,
now
like they're
Claude. So
they're
now Claude was telling me about like giving me like a very historical perspective stuff, is teaching me about my own family history in a way that would have taken me months like of like digging and research to find out on my own, right? So that was a time where AI was really really kind of blew my mind in a way.
yeah. Yeah, I'm in the background. I've been looking at the same thing, and it's like, yeah, that was my first thought would have been railways because Boilermakers, railways,
So Boilermaker,
and that
Boilermaker is actually it's a skilled. It was a skilled trade for anything to do with steam power. So if you worked on a steam engine, you were a Boilermaker. So that
that's like that's around when it.
steam power was everywhere back in the day. And like so Montreal was where the whole industrial revolution happened in Canada, and
It's also
on the
when
canal.
the railroads were kind of
Yeah, so
exploding in North America.
all the railways and ship ports here, and then all the industry along the Lachine Canal, right? Which coincidentally is a stone's throw for me, right back that way.
What's I also really found fun
But
because you can do stuff in the background when you're having a conversation with somebody.
yeah,
Is is just take any lump of text. Me being a game developer again. Um, and while you're having a chat, you can have it make a game about that while you're having a chat. Just by saying, make a game of this. This is similar to my having a cigarette and making something like that.
yeah, on the stump.
Yeah. It's kind of the reason I think that, like, I know I'm in a privileged situation that I've been working with AI for several years now, and
Irish
so it's
family
doing this.
survival
It's
game. Oh my god.
oh no! I just saw the potato
Potato
blight just
blight.
screwing
Oh
up the
my god,
screen.
it's horrible.
Gonna be a dysentery before we know it.
This just took a very weird turn. Why is it calling blight, not genocide?
Well, it's potato blight wasn't
Yeah,
genocide. It was just shit.
yeah.
Like AI can give you like a really fun way of just exploring silly ideas. It's like when you wake up and you have like a dumb dream about
Yeah.
something, or if you're a gamer or you're a programmer and we inevitably dream about those things sometimes. And you can
Back
just
to potato blight.
before you've forgotten it, you can just talk into your phone, and it's created either a description of it or a game about it or website about it or something about it. Like you can capture those moments. It's like if I want a web browser extension, plugin, tool, something. If it doesn't already exist, I
Yeah.
would have normally just given up. I would just given up. It's like, okay, whatever. I mean, they will eventually make it. Capital T they. But now it's not the same anymore. It's like, oh, fuck it, I'll make it.
Yeah.
So I'll just fire up the ID and you could be doing on a cigarette break. It's like, boop, make this thing. Blast it out. You go back to your computer, you've got the same history, just copy paste, put it in there, boop boop boop, done. You've got the extension you wanted that no one else had the particular requirement for.
Irish family survival game. What the fuck?
So it didn't make a thing I can play. Make an artifact. Yeah. Well, what was I reaching for? Oh my god, here it is. I've also found myself able to be a lot more productive while having conversations with people while also working, which is nice. I had some more questions for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what was that one? What limitations do you find in your use of AI? Because I know you do use it more than most. What limitations do you find running against when you're working with it,
Um
if any?
so with coding, it makes mistakes all the time, right? Like as you know, all it takes is one error in the code to make it break entirely, right? So you know, ideally you can say, oh, this doesn't work, or just copy and paste and a compiler error or whatever into the prompt and it'll just fix it. But if it doesn't fix it, well, like, you're going into the debugger if you even know what you're doing, right? So, like, it does easy stuff well, but anything beyond easy stuff, it's not reliable for, right? So
Yeah, no,
that's
I
kind
would agree.
of
It's
also like the bigger limitation is my limitation,
the
right?
biggest.
Like
I would
my
agree because like
because like like
it will
it only works well when you can proofread it, right? And like when you need to know what to ask for. And if you don't even know, if you can't use technical terms to ask what you want it to do, then it's only as good as a prompt that it shit in, shit out, right? Like,
yeah.
so like if I can't evaluate its output very well, then I'm the limit. It's not the AI that's the limit, right? So
I think that's really interesting because I think that's going to be the biggest problem. Is that because AI is such low hanging fruit to like replace jobs and do people's work and stuff, you're going to end up with a huge amount of software or systems or anything created by AI that no one understands.
yeah, because senior developers and engineers, once they catch on to this, I think a lot of them are just slow. But once they are the ones using AI, like you can just have teams, like juniors cannot compete with a senior that is able to just tell AI to do stuff, right? Like there's no reason to hire a junior when a senior who has like, years and years and years of experience and expertise can just tell AI to do the work of like 10 juniors in like a fraction of time, right?
I think this is worth touching on because the work of 10 juniors isn't necessarily the same as the work of one senior. And that's not to put a shade on junior developers. We all started
It's
somewhere,
not, but like
and we're always learning.
I was
But
a I remember what it was like being a junior. Like I
it's very easy to step on people's toes when you're a junior and know when to step back. It's like
yeah.
it's complicated, but AI is only going to, I think, exacerbate that.
But I was a junior not long ago, and I remember how useless I was. And like the way that it works is like it's like I could be given a problem and bang my head against the wall for weeks. It might take me weeks or even months to solve it if I solve it in the shittiest way I could. But then like it only took a few more years for me to reach a point where it's like give me that same problem that I was when I was a junior and it's like a day or two's worth of work, right? So it's like you're like now an AI can take that same problem and even do it even faster than someone who knows exactly how to solve it right away because they can just type that shit out so much faster, right? So
Yeah.
like I don't know what the future looks like for juniors. I really don't know. What I do know is that um the advantage that juniors have is that you have a personal tutor that will enable you
Yes.
to
Yes.
learn, that will allow you to learn 10 times the speed that we all had to learn before AI.
This
So
is why.
there's kind of counter opposing forces with AI here. So now, with that said, would I want to be a junior right now in the current job market and with AI just moving as fast as it is? No, I definitely would not want to be a junior. Even as an intermediate, I'm kind of like, ugh, I'm a little worried, right? So like, it's really hard to say what the future is like for juniors, right? So I
Yeah, I've got
personally wouldn't be surprised if most companies just freeze hiring on juniors starting this year.
I've got opinions on this, and most of them derive from the same opinions I have about the printing press. It's like, what's a junior? What even is that? Is it someone that doesn't program as good as a senior developer? That's not
Are you asking
relevant
rhetorically?
anymore.
Because I would
But
have,
it pretty rhetorically, but
yeah.
feel free to step in because it's
I mean,
to my mind, it's a rhetorical question. It's like it's not relevant anymore. Like if we can't change the basic questions about what the value of someone's work is based on what they're bringing to the table, then we'd still be valuing people who can change, like a blacksmith over someone who can
yeah,
build spaceships. Like the questions have changed, and they all continue to change. It's cool to have blacksmiths, cool to have spaceships, but there is always going to be a progression in one-ish direction. And right now, a junior developer, as described, if I were to describe it when I was a junior developer, would be a developer who is still heavily relying on Stack Overflow, heavily relying on their colleagues, and trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible. And that last piece, I think, is poignant because I think that's for the juniors of junior developers. If they're embracing modern technology and modern development techniques, including AI, that last point could give them a massive advantage because senior developers have been incredibly, and I speak from experience of unnamed ex CTOs of companies I've worked for, are shunning AI as a development tool. They see it as a threat or something that is a fad or whatever.
right.
But they're not seeing it as a valuable tool. I don't see it as a replacement for any job. I don't think that's realistic. And it shouldn't be because the jobs will just get better and more people become more powerful with these more powerful tools. So if you were to replace a job and leave a vacuum, why you just give the person the ability to become better at what they do. So a junior in the previous sense, yeah, they're fucked. A junior now, if they're willing to, learn new stuff, which I would hope to believe most juniors are, this could be the golden age. This could be the great leveler. This could be a time where, because that education is so much more accessible, things like YouTube and so on. AI being able to explain entire code bases, and like this is like a. I wish I had all these tools. I guess that's the only thing I could say. Is I wish I had all these tools
Right.
when I was a junior, and now they exist. So, Godspeed.
The
I
thing
mean,
is,
more power to them.
is like, I don't know how, I don't see how you go from junior to useful developer, um, like I don't know how you go from junior to like someone that someone would pay for work,
I'll give you a hint.
right?
There's no such thing as a junior developer or a senior developer. It's in HR that those terms exist. But realistically, when it comes down to like doing work, developing things, working in a team, all that matters is like, are you helping the team? Are you getting shit done? Like it. I don't give like I've hired many people in the past, and I don't care whether they describe themselves like as junior or senior, intermediate, or whatever. I just want to see like, do you have a hobby? Do you have a pet project? Do you like do you enjoy this? And I think AI is like a golden opportunity for people who genuinely enjoy it to like thrive because it takes so much of the grunt work out of it. They can, if they actually have their own ideas and pet projects and all the fun stuff they prefer to be working on, they can approach it so much more easily. And those are the kind of people I'd be looking for if if I was hiring right now.
Well, that's an optimistic view of it. I think maybe that's a great place to leave it. Um, yeah, thank you so much for your time, Cash.
Oh, thanks, man.
You don't have any links or anything. You have a YouTube, eh?
Ah,
Do you have
there's not
anything?
much
Do
on
you have
there.
anything if people wanted to connect?
I'm between work right now. Um,
Hmm.
Mostly focused on AI. So if anybody, I do a lot of consultancy work. It sounds really businessy and boring, but um, I've been doing this for quite a while now. So I
Hmm.
guess if anybody's listening is interested in solving problems in a different way using artificial intelligence, then yeah, you can reach out.
If only AI could
Um,
replace your employer and employ you, you know,
I can do that. Don't
and your
tell them.
landlord and your landlord. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you, man.
Yes,
Have a good
sir.
evening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Death Taxes Acid. Cash Garman is a special breed of developer, one who likes to live on the edge. He holds great hope for the future of technology in which AI empowers developers, big and small, to scale their efforts enormously. There's an enormous amount of certainty around AI, and like Cash, I believe there is some reason to be hopeful. See you in the next one.